What's that noise? Ah! Oh! Oh, God!
Horror games made YouTube careers. They turned screams into comedy. And fear into one of the internet's favourite genres. But why horror? Why did this genre, more than any other, take over YouTube? Why did Five Nights at Freddy's, a game made by one guy, take over the internet? Why is PT unforgettable when it never even came out? I want to find out why horror, more than any other genre, felt made for YouTube, and why it's the one we keep coming back to. Back in September 2010, Amnesia: The Dark Descent was released. It wasn't the first horror game, but it was different. I still remember playing Amnesia with my friend 14 years ago. We loved it so much we even tried speedrunning it. Resident Evil had been terrifying players since the 90s, and just 2 years before Amnesia, in 2008, Dead Space showed how AAA horror could rival the movie industry. But Amnesia changed things. It stripped away the combat and left you with a lantern in the dark. If you ran into trouble, you could only run and hide. That design made Amnesia perfect for YouTube. Every scream and jump scare was unpredictable, but why did millions choose to watch instead of play? YouTubers like PewDiePie were uploading Amnesia playthroughs. His first episodes went up over 14 years ago now. Markiplier and Jacksepticeye soon followed, and while the game terrified players, it showed the world something new, that watching someone else panic could be even more entertaining than playing the game yourself. The game was universally praised for the genuine fear it brought out in players and the atmosphere it brought with it. Wikipedia explicitly credits Amnesia with contributing to the rise of the Let's Play genre on YouTube. I played Amnesia when it first released with my friends, and we could not get enough of this game. Parts of the game, such as the invisible water monster, left me feeling tense and like there was a pit in my stomach. Amnesia: The Dark Descent was far from inventing the horror genre, but it did define modern first-person horror for new audiences. It really played into that feeling of helplessness and immersed you into the world. And this was the game that led me to discover that watching someone else panic was often more fun than playing the game myself. I would encourage my friends who had never heard of Amnesia to give the game a go themselves, so I could watch them go through key moments in the game, such as hiding in this wardrobe. I wanted to see how others reacted to this moment, and it was these exact moments that made the game perfect for YouTube. There were jump scares, unpredictable moments, and they all produced genuine reactions. And it was this game that sparked a wave of new creators. It opened up the doors to a whole new genre of content: Let's Play. A Let's Play was more than gameplay footage. It was about sharing the experience. You could feel like you were sitting next to someone on the internet, playing the game with them. You were now part of their experience. But Amnesia wasn't the only game hitting the front page of YouTube. By 2012, free indie horror games were everywhere.
Oh, what's that noise? Fuck! What the fuck? You don't do that! You don't do that, man! You don't do that!
Why did millions of people choose to watch these tiny indie games rather than play them themselves? This was the era of Slender, SCP, Outlast. Indie horror began flooding YouTube, each building on that helpless, immersive style that Amnesia had proven worked so well. 2012's Slender: The 8 Pages was a free Unity download. A very simple game, but incredibly tense. And millions chose to watch it. I played the game myself back then, and despite the graphics being very simple, the game delivered on that tense atmosphere. I even played through Slender recently just to see if it still had that magic about it, and it still got me scared.
Oh, fuck off. Shut up.
SCP was a community-driven lore game. Part of what made SCP so interesting to watch online was the mystery behind it. What was going on in this facility? What unique features did each SCP bring with it? And it encouraged people to look into every detail of that game. Horror gaming was ranging from independent, in-depth, atmosphere-led games to random Unity and Flash games, horror had become accessible to anyone with an idea and a computer to make it. These indie horror games delivered the experience, but YouTube was the delivery vehicle.
What are you doing here?
I wouldn't have even heard of most of these games without seeing someone else play them first. And that's how these horror games went from obscurity to millions of views overnight. By the mid-2010s, horror gaming wasn't niche anymore. It had gone mainstream. In 2014, Five Nights at Freddy's had players screaming at their screens. That same year, PT terrified people with nothing more than a single hallway. A year later, Until Dawn turned horror into an interactive movie. And by 2017, Resident Evil had reinvented itself in first person. All of this happened in just a few years. So why did these games hit so hard? And what made this era of horror gaming impossible to ignore? One game in particular pushed horror into the mainstream like never before. But how did a small indie project become a global phenomenon? Five Nights at Freddy's core design was all about tension. You had multiple cameras to manage and animatronics to keep track of. They may move from one area to the next, and you had to keep your security room safe. If you decided to keep all your doors locked, you would quickly run out of power and leave yourself open to the animatronics. And when you did run out of power, the lights would go out, and you would just find yourself waiting in the darkness. Would you make it that last hour through the night? The game would pause slightly too long to leave you unsure as to what would happen, and this became perfect for reaction content.
Oh god! What the fuck? What the fuck, okay?
Five Nights at Freddy's is credited with popularising the mascot horror genre, and since, it has inspired a whole wave of imitators. My nephew has been obsessed with Five Nights at Freddy's, Poppy Playtime, Garten of Banban, and while it was initially those jump scare reactions that brought these games to his attention, it was the lore behind these games that kept him hooked. In 2017, Resident Evil, arguably one of the biggest horror series in the world, suddenly went first person. But why? What could make a series known for action completely reinvent itself? The answer came 3 years earlier, in 2014, when a mysterious demo appeared on the PlayStation Network. PT, or Playable Tester, a project by Hideo Kojima and Guillermo del Toro, which was later revealed to be a teaser for an upcoming Silent Hills game. PT took a minimalist approach, taking place in just a single looping hallway, and in that hallway, PT was able to say so much.
Oh my god.
Oh my.
Are we
found a piece of
solving?
the picture.
Yes!
There was a focus on the environmental storytelling. You could piece together snippets of what was happening by looking at what was around you. And although I didn't have a PlayStation myself at the time, I was hooked on watching others play through it. And quickly, PT became a viral sensation. Millions of people had watched playthroughs of the game and gone on to look for more. They wanted breakdowns of the story. They were invested in theories as to what was happening. Proof that that environmental storytelling could be so impactful.
Fuck.
But when PT was cancelled and removed from the PlayStation Network, any PlayStation with PT installed on it instantly became more valuable. Some people were asking for upwards of $1,000 just to get their hands on a PlayStation with PT installed. But most importantly, PT had a direct influence on the design of Resident Evil 7. The game dropped in January of 2017, and this was my first introduction to the Resident Evil series. And just like PT, I found myself watching Resident Evil 7 on YouTube. The game had shifted back to survival horror after Resident Evil 5 and 6 had leaned into action. This was the first Resident Evil that went first person. The perspective that first person brought to horror was too powerful to ignore, and that focus on environmental storytelling brought with it an atmosphere that was perfect for horror gaming. But this game marks something more important. It showed how AAA horror games were now borrowing from the viral indie games before it. In August of 2015, Supermassive Games released Until Dawn, a cinematic horror game where every choice mattered. Why did a branching horror movie become one of the most addictive games to watch online?
Holy crap, don't look at me! Oh, no you don't! Wait,
Until Dawn blended interactive drama with survival horror, which many called a playable horror movie. There was a butterfly effect system. The choices that you made early on in your playthrough would open up multiple outcomes later in the game. The game had a strong cast, which heightened that cinematic feel. Until Dawn sales surpassed Sony's expectations despite little marketing, and because many of us saw it as a playable horror movie, it became perfect for Let's Plays. Viewers could debate choices that the player had made, and they could predict who would make it to the end of the game. And again, I didn't own a PlayStation, so I didn't have a copy of the game myself, but I was hooked to watching playthroughs of Until Dawn on YouTube. When Supermassive Games released similar experiences on the PC, I played through those with my wife. I was the one playing on the computer, and she was the one helping me make the decisions. We found ourselves pausing at every decision the game offered to us, debating on how it would affect our playthrough. What makes horror different from every other genre? Most games are fun because you're the one playing it. But with horror, sometimes the best experience is watching someone else suffer through it. But why? Because every scream and every jump scare was content. And on YouTube, that made horror unstoppable.
Ah, jävlar I fittans rövballe! Oh my god!
So why do people prefer watching horror to playing it? It feels safer. There's less stress when you're the one not in control. But you can feel some of the tension from the game, just without the panic of being the one that has to deal with it. It becomes shared entertainment. The person playing it is feeling the tension of going through the game, and the person watching is along for the ride feeling the tension too. Me and my wife's favourite games to play through together are horror games. We recently played through the game Still Wakes the Deep, with me playing and my wife watching. When my nephew plays Poppy Playtime or Garten of Banban, he either turns the volume down on the TV or refuses to wear headphones. And that's because he likes the lore of the game. He likes the environmental storytelling, but he doesn't like the fear. And when I played Amnesia: The Dark Descent with my friends, half the fun was watching each other's reactions. And that's exactly why horror found a home on YouTube. Because if the fun is in those reactions, then what better place to share them?
What the fuck?
But why did this genre, more than any other, dominate this platform for so long? Well, any time that the player felt fear, that was natural reaction content.
Oh shit!
Horror games often have set pieces. They may have jump scares, chase scenes, or big story reveals, and these become great clips. And creators were able to build identities around it. Markiplier is dubbed the king of Five Nights at Freddy's. Creators like Jacksepticeye, early KSI videos, and one of my favourites, Jesse Cox's Scary Game Squad, along with numerous other creators. Even today, I come downstairs most mornings and find my wife watching Markiplier with her breakfast. But horror isn't just about those jump scares. It's about the mystery, the deeper lore, and the deeper the lore, the more people want to talk about it. So why do horror games keep creating new communities, all dedicated to exploring the story? Five Nights at Freddy's has a massive history of fan-made theories. SCP has a whole Wikipedia of rules, looking at the creatures and the backstory. My nephew loves breakdown videos of the story and the secrets of Poppy Playtime and Garten of Banban more than the gameplay. So watching horror games really is more than just those scares, because it becomes about piecing together a story as a community. And then came something completely new, and that was co-op horror.
Oh fuck.
Suddenly getting scared together was even funnier than getting scared on your own.
Oh fuck. That actually scared me.
But how did games like Phasmophobia and Lethal Company turn that fear into one of the most popular group experiences online? Phasmophobia introduced group puzzle solving. What evidence can we find to help us figure out the kind of ghost haunting this house? Lethal Company brought with it a group purpose: find salvageable materials and bring them to the company. Lethal Company blew up on the internet just like Amnesia once did. Inspiring future games like Repo to innovate. And this shows that cycle continuing. One game shows what works, and future games innovate on it. But would this wave of games have existed if Amnesia had never proved that Atmosphere worked? Or Among Us showing that small co-op games could go viral? And it makes you wonder, would any of these games have existed without those first games? Without Amnesia's Atmosphere, would Outlast have ever existed? Without Five Nights at Freddy's jump scares, would Poppy Playtime exist? Horror games have always been iterative, each game building on the last. So, why did horror become the perfect YouTube genre? Because it's the only kind of game that's just as fun to watch as it is to play. Horror turns gaming into a shared experience, whether it's with friends in the same room or with millions of people online. And maybe that's the real legacy that these games create. They aren't just designed to scare the player, they were designed to be watched. Thank you to everyone on the Patreon. Click the link below to support the channel. YouTube thinks you'd like this video right here, so I'll see you there. Thanks for listening.